And in both of those spaces, a key of those issues has been to retain the people that you bring in. It's the skilled, talented people. In the technology area, once you get people grooved in, you don't want to lose them. So, that was a kind of a key driver that drove me forward as I moved into my roles as a CLO. I did that in a clinical setting, home health, and then also, but I've worked in that in a call center space in the insurance company. So, again, the idea is that, when people leave, there's a void. And there's a time where you're losing quality, you're losing service, you're losing money. So when you keep people that you need there, then that's what drives us at that point in time. So I want to talk a little bit about how we can use, even in this time and space of this pandemic, and how we can look at the silver lining of what this remote world can bring us. So give me a little guy, who am I talking to? Again, a thought of what I had to push, got it, sorry. Over here, by the way, just if you see me touch anything, that's my presentation screen. So if I'm distracted for a moment, but the chat's right in front of me. So type away and tell me something that you think about onboarding. And in particular, I'm curious, when you hear that word, what's your first reaction about that? And as Grace Ann, shares, to involve recent designer of onboarding. Whoa, that's interesting. That lives in North Dakota. Oh, we have nothing to whine about in terms of temperature. Holy cow. Well, thanks, Grace Ann, for joining us this evening. Is to involve recent to 2-year folks in the design of the onboarding structure. That's a really, really good idea. And let's build on that in just a little while. Anybody else? 50% turnover. They're recruiting all the time. Yeah. Retail, I'm guessing. Let's see. Hi, Denise. Somerset County, New Jersey. Grants. Okay. Oh, no. So Denise, tell me a little bit more why you think it's more than what HR does. It involves supervisors and peers. You mean it's not just the stuff that they tell you about where you got to park and where the coffee pot is and which form you have to fill out? Tell me more about what you think about.
Yeah, way more than that, right? It's getting connected with the mission and the culture, meeting as many people as you can, and just really finding your place as quickly as possible.
Exactly. Very, very good points. And that follows up with what Jean's saying too. It's creating that collaboration. And I think that's a really, really good point about how you bring kind of a community together. So when we think about this, is that my focus on onboarding is that I really think it's been done very poorly in the past. And that this is an opportunity to really focus on impacting a design that will engage people in order to increase their retention while reducing their time to proficiency. And I mean that because there's a difference between just going to work and being proficient. I look at this as the path that they will follow, that you're building for them, that they will succeed in. So with that said, that's my focus, that's my goal, and that's what I've been building. Now, I'm going to put a plea up front. If anybody finds new numbers, send them to me, because I've been having a hard time trying to update some of these numbers. So, for example, these first two things I want to throw into the chat, but they're from 2020, and I know they've changed. And stuff is behind. The people that I usually go into and get information from, this is from SHRM, is from 2020. What do you think was 50% of hourly workers? How many months before they left, do you think? Three. Yeah, 4. Okay, there you go. That was what SHRM was telling me in 4. Yep. Nah. And especially if you look in some of the more call centers, retail, food service, that stuff's just been going crazy. How about seniors? How about senior hires, leadership? If you think about the exempts, what do you think about them? 6, 12. Yeah, 12. Believe it or not, it's 18. I think with leaders, it's more like they get the first year, and if they don't see a curve after that first cycle, that's when they tend to say, I'm out of here. Now, the cost of replacing a worker, percent of salary. Don't think of benefits. Don't think of overall compensation. Think of just salary. How much do you think you're going to end up paying to get somebody back, just to get them into the pipeline? What do you think the percentage is? 30%, says Marion, excuse me. Holiday. Sorry, Bob. I read the first word, 50%. Pretty close, 50 to 60%. Give Holiday Bob and Riley Jeff. I'll get them backwards sooner or later. My apologies
Sorry.
My apologies for. I blink and it's like the first 3 or 4 letters, and that's as far as my brain can retain. So forgive me if I murder names tonight. It's unintentional. I'm just trying to blink twice. Glassdoor, which I expected to update their stuff. This came from the beginning of 2021. But what do you think in terms of days to fill a position? And this was for hourly employees. How long do you think? 60 days. Yeah, Bob, you were really close. 52 days was an hourly. They did not have a slot, Glassdoor did not at the time, for executives. I would be curious to know that. I'm still looking to find that out. And that goes back to the compensation. When you think about replacing a worker, that was just salary. If you start adding in compensation, I think you're going to see some of the numbers that like Marion said, 120. You're going to see closer to those kind of upper numbers when you think about benefits, you think about incentives, you think about time, vacation, and health benefits. So those numbers start adding up. So that, and then time to proficiency. Think about, yeah, I know, I that's been one of my concerns I've been trying to find. So if anybody does find any numbers, shoot them my way, please. M&Ms will come your way, I promise. But the time to proficiency, and what that meant was in terms of new hires, they were averaging this out. This came from the MIT Sloan folks, and the idea of what was the range between an hourly to an executive or leader. Just broad sense of range of proficiency. And I put quotey fingers up around proficiency because I have found in my own experiences working with operational leaders, they can't necessarily define what proficient is. They can tell you when you're doing something wrong, but they can't necessarily tell you up front what it takes to be proficient. But just from a guesstimate, what do you think? How many weeks? Start with the hourlies. 8, 6. And what do you think about executives? 12, 15. Yeah, 8 to 26. They say the learning curve for new hires was between 1 and in terms of money, they're saying for hourlies, it's around 1 to 2.5% of total revenues of the company is spent on just trying to get hourly employees as ramped up. Time to new hires, they say it's between 8 weeks, clerical for 20 or 8 weeks for like clerical type roles and hourly employees, 20 weeks for exempts, leaders, managers, and stuff, 26 for executives and up. And that's where I think we can start seeing, if you think about this from a money perspective, this is where the return on learning comes in. We're not talking ROI, we're talking a whole different focus. What does the impact of your learning impacts, the solutions you bring into the table, come into performance? And those are the kind of things you start measuring. Those are costs. So tell me about your last onboarding experience. Why was it boring, Marion? And how long was it?
It was disorganized. It was 3 years ago. It was disorganized. They didn't share the informal information that I was really looking for. Everything was stuff on the surface, like the kitchen and the bathroom and the copy machine, pretty much. Oh, and also the compliance stuff. Yeah, that had to be checked off.
Okay, so Grace Ann, tell me more a little bit about your your twins. That's kind of funny. I have something I heard too. And Thashina, forgive me for naming. What kind of stuff did you have?
Yes. So I had to
use my own curiosity and what I knew to do my own assessment. I had to figure out, who do I need to talk to about what? I asked a lot of questions, and I kind of built my own onboarding plan for myself so that I could position myself to be successful pretty quickly.
Okay, so it sounds like you and our moderator here had something similar, that the important things that you need are ongoing support. Can the two of you kind of like throw back into chat for the rest of us? What are the things that you wanted? I'm just curious, what are the important things that you felt you needed that you didn't get? A go-to person to help navigate the organization. That's fascinating.
Mhm.
So you're looking for like a buddy or a mentor, some kind of perspective? Who the key players are. Okay, fascinating. I think that's one of the things that comes into play when you think about onboarding, because there are two parties involved in the process. And Jeff, I saw you had a great one, and maybe we'll come back to that in a minute. But I want to talk about the conflict, because by its very, this is going to come back to, and apologies to my HR brethren and colleagues, but the old line is HR is not for you. And there's a little bit of conflict in that point. HR is got to take care of the company. And I think this is one of those perspectives that we need to stop from a learning perspective. We need to step back and say, what's our role? How do we make sure we meet the needs of everybody? So throw back in the chat, from the organizational perspective, what do you think the organization's opinion, feelings, obligations about onboarding are? What do you think their focus is for onboarding from an organizational human resources perspective? Legal. Yeah. Keep us from all going to jail and being able to go to work. Okay. Yep. Benefits. Okay. Check the boxes. Like what kind of boxes, Jeff?
Legal.
What's legal mean? Just compliance kind of stuff?
Compliance kind of stuff, yeah. If you don't fill out your paperwork right, you don't get the benefits, or having dealt with the other side of that, having tried to write training for the legal side of it, it was just paying attention to a lot of details that in the beginning, most people don't even know.
Okay. All right. And HRIS systems, that's interesting, Melissa. Can you share a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. From the perspective of, in the onboarding side of things, if Lord willing, your HRIS systems are built with the proper feeds into everything, right? Getting everything right in whatever system is feeding every other information system is a huge deal. So, even just down to spelling and the demographic details for learners, it's a real key part to the onboarding pieces.
So being able to understand how within the system you fit in their acceptance of their goals, their career path. Well, it's not real, at least what the roles expectations are, in that structure. Is that what you mean, like that?
Yeah. And even, depending on how the systems are built, right? Even reporting structure, where they fall in the org structure, all of in healthcare, right? Even the basics of how their contact information feeds into any kind of emergency alert systems, having all of that right at the very beginning of the, most of those onboarding things feed that. And then depending on if your talent management system is integrated with that, exactly. It also, starts with how you see development beginning on day one. Absolutely.
Totally makes sense. And I think that's part of what, Marion, what you're kind of coming into the idea too, is that there are things that matter, but do they matter to everybody at that point in time? And what really matters to that person at the time? So, these are the kind of things that kind of what we just talked about. Number one, compliance. Got to make sure we don't go to jail. Do you fit within the organization? Are you, do you know what the structure is? And I wish I could pull to my memory, but I just read it this morning and I'm posting on Twitter in a day or so. that HR IT systems, I think it was 75% of employees don't know what's available in terms of jobs because their HR IT systems are so kludgy. And having been one of those people who had to implement an entire integrated MIS, I totally understand the pain our IT colleagues go through. And duct tape, there's just not enough of it in the world. So I think there's a challenge and an opportunity within the learning development space to bridge the barriers, to bridge barriers is the wrong word. Let me back that up. To build bridges over the walls that are not intentionally built, but are there just because of sometimes the technology that we're stuck with from years gone by. So let's take that one more step. Now we're onboarding. What did you want when you onboarded? What should we be giving and providing new hires from that individual's perspective? What are the things we should be doing? What do you think would help them feel that at the end of that experience, that they're in the right place, that they don't go home or they don't log off saying, oh God, I made the wrong decision. Connecting with the people who help them with their job, okay? Connect to the team, exactly, Samantha. How can I get through the first 3 weeks? Oh, I'm so there with you, Bob. Thanks for changing your name around. I appreciate that. Helps me so much. I love you. Gene, you had a great one too. All right. Tell me, all right, let's take a second. All right, Jeff, I'm gonna ignore you, but I'm gonna ask Gene. You know I love you. Gene, tell me a little quick, what was the great onboarding experience and why was it the best? Why did it work for you?
Because I felt like there were things that people were thinking about that I would need from day one. And also from day one, everyone involved from the manager to the colleagues made me feel like that they knew I was there. It was they made sure that there was a welcome basket, there was supplies, the desk was ready. If it wasn't ready, if something was missing, they made sure I knew. They knew I knew from day one who to contact. Like, again, it was just a lot of was how it made me feel versus, this detailed, training plan or something like that.
Gotcha. They built you for success. They prepped you to be successful. They said, we value you and we are so glad that you decided to join us and to value us. It was a partnership, an expectation. So you understand what's expected. You are connected to others. The idea that you have support, who to talk to, how to get through the first couple of weeks, being valued, trusted, and feeling safe. Common human feelings. But what happened, this is a potential conflict though, when you look at the two columns. The org needs people to go to work as soon as possible. So for them, the one and done model, come in, stay legal, don't get arrested, and by the way, go to work tomorrow, okay? Compared to the new hire who wants to feel welcome, valued, and heard. So there's a balance between the need for effectiveness and emotions, between creating that commitment to work and creating a community of workers. And I think that's where our opportunity is, especially in this kind of remote space. So just take a second here. If you know how to use the markers on Zoom, be my guest. If you want to throw in the chat, be my guest. Just the idea is that we start to look at what you had and what you should be building, what you experienced and what you think you should be providing. I want to start having, let's stretch our minds just a little bit to start thinking of other ways to communicate, to reach out, to branch out, especially in this kind of virtual space. I do look at this as a real opportunity to say, hey, bad practices, one and done, having 40 people in a room and bad chicken at lunch and seeing the old videos from the CEO don't have to be my new hire's onboarding experience. We can do this differently. But what are the things you should be doing? Think about it. I mean, we had that, terrific, welcome video from the CEO. But is it really relevant? Virtual, simulations of the day you're going to have, a day in your life, what work's going to be like, prep you for it. I love the digitalized stories. That's an interesting idea. I don't know who wrote that, but if you did it, throw it in chat and tell me more about that. The observed tasks, I think, have checklists. Early in my career, I did work with the Department of Energy, and the U.S. Navy was my primary client, and I became I understood the use of procedural checklists. I mean, you know, these were people that had never gone to school to do some of the work they were doing in the service of our nation. And they were going places that we don't normally go to, in vehicles that nobody really has a chance to go do. And they were doing it safely. So, you know, it's nice to know that you don't forget anything by having a checklist sometimes. That's not a bad thing to do. So you can kind of get the idea of what you're going in and where we should be headed. And I think those are the things to start thinking about. There's more ways than just one, and they can all be done in a blended hybrid fashion. It doesn't have to be the same old way, because when you think about it, it comes down and, you know, from the moment they say, yes, I'm going to join you, until day one, when they're actually, you know, on the payroll, start with a pre-boarding effort. And I understand there's a difference between hourly and exempts. I get it. But there are things you can do and offer to hourly employees that if you just offer and say, if you want. I am seeing, especially now in this pandemic remote space, people are tapping into it. So provide the forums, have some short videos ready, but the video should be of the key staff members that they're going to have to interact with, the team members they're going to know, and let those people explain to the new people a little bit more about who they are and what they do. These should be informal. This is from the team perspective. We're not talking about the CEO and the CFO and the CIO and the COO and all those C people. They can see those on a website. This is about, we value you. So talk to me, okay? Get them access to your platforms that you can. And this is where I will say to every learning person here, one of your best friends should be IT. Feed them, bring them cookies, use chocolate, I don't care, feed them. But go be friends, because all these platforms have internal settings and external settings. There's access control. You can open up a small door and let people in. They don't have to be that, you know, full employees. There's ways in. Trust me, from the day they say yes, they're already in the HR IT system. There are techniques to do it. I've done it. Be friends, explain it. Bring your CIO into the conversation and start showing that these people stay longer and there's money. Then they'll be your buddy. We can talk more about that later. Okay, so get them access to your platforms so that they have access to the information, and make it so that they can do it at their leisure and with other people around them. So think about, you know, the tax forms. You know, there's always the question, do I write 0? Do I write 1? Do I write 2? Let me go ask somebody. You know, the spouse is saying, when are the holidays? How much sick time do you have? What kind of vacations? Let me share it with you. Okay, that's really great. You know, and then bring up the idea that you know, these are the things that you know, a happy family brings a support system to that new employee, and that cannot be, you know, overlooked. That is an incredibly powerful emotion. So then, you know, make the next step, blend it in, create some kind of virtual sessions, think and make it personal. You know, think about what's in it for them. Okay. And allow some fun into the engaging experiences. You know, get to know your new colleagues, get to know the people you're going to work with, create connections so that they know who they're going to work with, both on the team and also their partners. You know, somebody in IT, purchasing, you know, those kind of things. And then plan on their training. And I'm a big fan on this. You know, we're supposed to know this kind of stuff, but train on the cycle. Train on the business cycle. So if you have a budgeting system that comes into play and the budgets are due in September and your employee starts in January, don't teach them the budgeting system and process in January. They're not going to remember it. Wait until August. You know, if they're going to have to, you know, buy a new printer for their house and they're going to have to fill out an expense report for it, do that then. Let's teach about the expense report so you can fill this out and you can get the printer delivered to your home office. So think about those kind of things about you know, that come into play. And when you're doing some kind of technical training that is involved for the job, don't forget at this point in time, include the business behaviors that they need to be successful. What are the communications that they will not have a chance to observe? Those informal communications, figure them out, help them. We got to build success because our future leaders, and they are all leaders at all levels, and they start from day one. And so we need to be there starting them from day one as well. I just looked at my other monitor. I love all the checks and the hearts and the stars. And if somebody could remind me how to clear them off the screen, I would be so grateful, because I forgot how to do it in a hurry.
Under annotate, you can hit the clear button.
Clear all drawings. There we go. Thank you. Took me a second to go in the middle of that. Okay, thank you. Appreciate. And then there we go. Although it does add a lot more, color and pizzazz to the screens. I should have, in some ways, maybe I have to include that next time. Our partners over at SHRM, Society for Human Resource Management, has come up with the 4 C's to onboarding. And I cannot tell you how this PDF is great. There's a link here. We'll share it with you. And I've added an additional C. I brought in one more C where I think is important. It's called career pathing. And this provides a commitment that each party, I think, makes to each other. And it's built on openness, and it builds on a strong base of trust between the parties. We kind of go through this because it does start with the idea that compliance, that's our lowest level. It includes everybody, the basic legal and policy related rules and regulations. It's about keeping everybody safe. It's about keeping everybody, healthy. If you're in a hospital setting, knowing what the health rules are, from protocols on personal protective gear, from transport, from information, from OSHA, whatever those things are. We want everybody to do that. But this is the kind of stuff that you can also do ahead of time. You can, especially if your HR is working with the IT teams, you can monitor the document completion. You can ensure that they're done correctly, that they're accessible only to those who require them, and have retention policies so that that they're kept the amount of time. So we have followed all the, we've checked all those boxes. Everybody's happy. The end of the year reports are done, and no leaders up there, getting harangued for your team didn't finish compliance and ethics. Yeah, right, fine. That takes us to clarification. And this is a part where we start to build that long-term investment, because that refers to ensuring that employees understand what their new job is and all the expectations. It's about roles and responsibilities. One of the things that has been lost, I'm going to say lost in quoting fingers, is that, I don't have the chance to lean over my cube wall and ask Bob, how do you do this? And what do they expect me to do? Because across the wall is my bride who's doing her job, over there. So we need to be planful and purposeful and say, what is the expectation? What does success look like? How will you be measured? And here's how we're going to do that. So access to HR knowledge bases, like a SharePoint system or an internal Teams system. You can give them all the related information they need to go from benefits to business. You can provide the information that includes the kind of like first day FAQs to their 90-day FAQs. And I forgot who said it earlier, but involving people from the first couple of years would be great, because this is when you go back and go, what did you need to know at 30, 60, 90, 120 days? What are the things you really could have used information on? Now, your new hires will be able to access this knowledge base for more information throughout the employee life cycle. So this is a chance, again, create that connection between the organization and the person, between the person and their team, and some of that information may be helpful to their family as well, and that's a happy world. So, I once had to go home and say, I think I made the worst decision ever in my life, and I've moved you all here. Luckily, I was wrong, but that was not a very pleasant conversation to have that night. And that takes us into culture. This is where I think, having those conversations can be taken away, because culture is that very broad category that includes providing a person with that sense of our organizational norms, formal and informal. They can get the formal from our websites, and it's good to reinforce it. What does our company stand for? What is our purpose? What are the things we support? Do we do United Way? Do we do whatever we do? Those kind of things. But this is also where you get the informal, and you could start aligning your people to purpose. And that's powerful. When you think about the onboarding portal, and about the pre-boarding aspect of it. This is where you take the company values, visions, and create that kind of departmental identity. Because every organization, you know, they all have their own little cultures. You know, I worked in a insurance company, and our call center system had, you know, the claims people had their way of doing things, the calls people their ways of doing things, bless you. The dental people had their way of doing it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And God forbid you talk to the corporate business people, they had a whole different world. So this is about creating that connection for me to the new team I'm joining, okay? So, you know, again, I'm real big on videos. I helped a team that was having some attrition problems, and one of the things silliest things they did is they made some videos of the things this team did. And one of the things they did was they joined together, even in a pandemic, and they did it very carefully, but they had done homes for Habitat for Humanity. And they shared some videos of that. And they actually had feedback from people going, hey, that's something important you value. So that matters. So think about that, because it creates the connections for people. And that's really, I mean, we're back to the old idea. We don't leave jobs. We don't leave companies. We leave people. You know, I mean, yes, sometimes we leave companies, and sometimes, yeah, the job stinks or something changes. But a lot of drivers are, you know, they've got a bad leader or bad teammates. So creating that connection from before day one, strengthening it through the rest of the time, it's that interpersonal relationship. And it's that informational network that everybody has to establish. And I forgot who said it earlier, but think about it. This is about not only my team, but the people I have to work with and support and serve. IT, human resources, procurement, maybe the payroll people, maybe it's an operational team. You know, my L&D team supported 11 different VPs, you know, doing business operations in an insurance center. So, you know, all those people, this is where we start creating the people we need to know, who we work with, who we support. I'm also a big fan at this point in time of using, and I'm going to use the two terms, and they are different. But for now, I'm going to blend them together because people tend to be lazy, and I'm going to be lazy today. Buddy or mentor. I know there's a difference. Whatever you decide, somebody who can help create a coaching guidance that helps that new person navigate the organization. Somebody said it earlier, and it was pure brilliance, because that's what it is. Keep it personal. It's all at that level. And that takes us up into the idea that, you know, career pathing. And this is where this is a win-win for both sides of this. You know, a career path is a sequence of jobs and can lead you to a short or a long-term career goal. And some follow kind of a linear, you know, path, you know, senior or, you know, newbie, junior, title, senior title, you know, onwards. My wife shared with me once, she thought it was more of like a learning lattice. And I thought that was a kind of an interesting perspective, you know, of how we might go back and forth, you know, changing our fields to achieve career or personal goals. But the benefit in this is two-sided, because if an organization looks at this from a strategic perspective, they can start deciding the talent they need 18 to 24 months down the road and tell people, hey, we need people who can do this. And here are the technical skills they have. Here are the behavioral competencies we need them to be capable of demonstrating. And here's the ways to acquire those particular sets of skills so that you're ready when we need you. And people know that. They're going to go, hey, sign me up. So they could start looking for the future too. So this is a real win, because if you tell people from day one, hey, we have a career pathing model, there's options to gain this, and there's ways to learn how to do it, and we'll communicate with you and connect with you, you have a professional career here, guaranteed. Man, and then you put it into their personal plan every year. Invest, you know, learning is a strategic tool. It's one of the easiest ways to engage people. And if you engage people, you know, according to Gallup, the higher the engagement, the longer they stay. If you invest in their personal development and professional development and show them they have a future, tell me why you're going to go. That's a great way to bring all those seeds back together again. And even in this particular space, I think it's higher. Now, Deloitte came out with this at the end of 2020. And they haven't updated it, but and I think the numbers have probably changed since then. And obviously, I think they've skewed even more like this, in my personal opinion. The bottom of the chart started to do this, and then then a variant came out, and then they started to do this, and then another variant came out, and then they started. Hybrid is where we're going to be. Okay, it's just, I'm sorry, I cannot see it in any other way, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't miss commuting all the time. Do I miss having coffee with my friends? Absolutely. Are we going to have that again? Absolutely. I see our office spaces being used as collaboration spaces and no longer cubicles, but that's a different day's discussion. And I would be glad to have a virtual Zoom coffee with you and talk about that anytime, because God knows I've got an opinion. And Irish Smith with a microphone, I've got 3 opinions. But I think the point comes down to is that when you look at all these kind of things, it's not about the technology. It's about access to the connections, the content, the community. There's a lot of high tech involved in all this stuff. Absolutely. Does that mean that we don't have a high touch? One of the weirdest things I did, weird. One of the most interesting jobs I had at one point, I ran a statewide competency-based educational degree granting program for the community college system here in Kentucky. And it was having some issues when I came on board, and which is why I took it, because I was fascinated by it when it was launched, and I was always like, why isn't this thing succeeding? It should be wild. And a couple of things changed. One was I changed its assessment strategy completely, and I'll talk a little bit more of that in a second. But the other thing I did was I brought in coaches and success coaches. And we use technology to monitor when students weren't connecting into their content, when they hadn't logged into the courses. And the first thing they had to do was pick up the phone. No email, no text, pick up the phone. High technology is great. High touch matters more. So figure out with your IT, friends, what kind of access you can gain, what levels you can allow them, and then start making the connections. However, whatever tool you use, bring them in, invite people to a meeting. You got a staff meeting? Bring them in. You got a social hour? Better yet, invite them in. Hey, we're having a happy hour. You don't have to come. Hourly employees, you don't have to come. But if you want to, we're going to be here. Get to meet the team. High touch. Reach out, make connections, put a face to the name. Doesn't mean you have to be on camera all the time, okay? And no, I don't ask everybody to do that. But if you want to, and you're in a small group, hey, why not? I mean, it's a great way to find ways to, like I said, make this. Now, this is another kind of way of doing it, is you can start finding out, the social aspect. And this comes back to the cultural norms. Because yes, you've got Teams or you've got Buzz or Slack, and you can, all those tools are great for having, the business stuff, access control, pre-day one to day one on, okay? You can still allow certain kinds of access for certain kinds of information. Sure, before day one, you don't want them to have access to conversations going on about your operations. Totally get it. Can they get access to what your team is talking about in terms of the social aspects? Sure, why not? I mean, there's one team that I worked with, a small little manufacturing company, all on their own. I did nothing I'm just amazed by it. They found a group that likes cribbage. I didn't even know what cribbage was. And if you don't know what cribbage is, look it up. It's hysterical. I still don't understand the game. But there are people in Germany, England, Canada, and the States from this small manufacturing company that all play cribbage. And they do it online synchronously over Zoom. And the company's gone, okay, why not? I mean, they're not it's certainly we're back down to, off hours, but they found this and they did it on they used Buzz, but that was their tool of choice. But the point comes all the way back down to, it's about creating those connections. Can anybody tell me what the most, who knows what the Q12 is? Question number one. Do you know what the Q12 is? The Gallup Q12. Anybody? If you don't, just unmic for a minute and say, I don't.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
All right. Real quick. Q12 is, there's 12 questions that the Gallup organization has been using for 40 plus years. And it's a humongous wealth of data. But it's 12 questions that are focused in on levels of how engaged you are with your organization, with your team. And it can be done from the macro all the way to the, or enterprise-wide level to see how engaged it is. And again, because higher levels of engagement, higher retention, better quality, better service, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, lower health costs, tons of data. For those of you who know what the Q12 is, did I say that right? What is the one question that is the most telling question of personal level of engagement? Tell me more, Dashina. Nope.
There was a question that we debated a lot, and I think it was around, I have a close friend at work or something like that. And we used to say, it doesn't matter if you have friends, but it showed that it did matter when people were able to identify, I have someone that I can go to or I consider as a friend. But there was a lot of disagreement around that. It's like, you don't need to have a good friend to
Here,
the data said something different.
come here.
That's true. It's do you have a best friend at work? If I recall correctly, it's question 8, and it is the highest indicator. And this point comes down to, and it's not about friend, okay? It's not about, it's more like, is there someone that you trust that you can gripe and moan and feel safe enough to complain about the world or your job, and know they're not going to tattle on you or sell you out or anything? That's really what they're trying to say is, is there someone there that you feel safe enough to do authentically you? That's what they mean. Best friend's kind of a tough term. Although it was great when my wife and I both worked at the same company for quite a while, and I could always answer that question. Absolutely. And now that I work here, I still can answer that question. My bride's 2 doors over. But the idea comes back down to is it's personal. So especially from a leader's perspective, pick up the phone, write a card. You have no idea how powerful a little card and maybe a little gift card, $5 Starbucks. It goes so deep because it's so important. For those who, great question. So one of the things I did when I worked for the insurance company, I had a global team. So I've been dealing with remote work. Well, I've been dealing with remote work since the 1980s. I was a mobile worker for IBM a long, long time ago. And I say mobile because I had a computer, a laptop that had a handle on it. And I could carry it with me. And of course I had a power cord about this long, so I had to bring an extension cord. Thinking, but when I worked at the insurance company, I had a global team. And one of the things you do when you have remote employees is that you create teams. So one of the things about Q12 is that they always wanted you to look at the idea of what can you do to help people be engaged. And at the time, this insurance company was going to go on to the perfect service model. And perfect service is pioneered by Disney, by the way. And Disney has, they want everyone to, be able to have that perfect experience. And it's about anticipation. Can anybody tell me what the most asked question of a Disney employee is? Any ideas? Well, that's a great idea, by the way, Samantha. The buddy. Where's the bathroom? No. Believe it or not, they're very well marked. Their signage is astounding at Disney. Good guess, Denise. You'll be amazed at this one. One more. Oh, the things they ask employees. The most asked question: what time is the 2 o'clock parade? Do you think they really want to know what time the parade is? That's true. What do you think they're really asking?
What time should they be there?
Part of it. Very good, Samantha. What else do you think they're asking, though? Best spot. Bingo, Grace Ann.
Are they asking if they can trust you? Oh, they're the best spot. Ah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so employees are like taught to try and anticipate what are they really asking. My own personal, my own experience. I was so not wanting to take my twins to Disney. At this time, they were 5.5. And I'm convinced they were making princesses up overnight just to confuse me and keep me confused. But I get there, and of course, they're this tall. The rest of the world is this tall, and the rest of the world, I'm convinced, is at Disney in Florida, where I'm at right now, and they'd all decided to come on the same day. I'm a wreck, I admit it. And I see one of those double-decker buses, and I see the Disney castle all the way in the background. And I look at this man by the bus, and I just, calm as could be. And I looked at him and said, how do I get from here to there? And he said very calmly, you can't. I thought I was going to hurt that man. But then he took a deep breath and he said, but if you get on my, because the princesses and their consorts will be dancing on the, I don't know what it was, in the next 15 minutes, and the roads are completely blocked. But if you go up to the top of my bus and sit on the other side, your daughters will be able to see over the railing and see all of the princesses dance. And then after it's done, I will drive you there. And I almost kissed that man. So the idea here is that we're trying to make it personal. We're trying to make that connection. And what we're trying to do is find that way so that we can anticipate what they need. One of you said earlier, the best thing about, their job with their onboarding experience, I'm sorry, Jean, maybe, I'm guessing, was that your desk was ready. There was a welcome basket. There were things that were prepared for you. Your connections had already been set up. Your access had been, your logins were already set. Yeah. Should that change when you're remote? Heck no. Put it in a box, send it to somebody, write them a card. The whole idea is that you create that connection and create an experience that is perfect for them, because if it's perfect, they will stay. And you are building for their success. And I'm sorry, this goes back to my assessments that I told you a little bit earlier. What I learned about success was, I'm going to take you back to this community college role I had. We had horrible attrition rates. I mean, horrible, like in the 85% rates of people who enrolled and then dropped. So I did some digging, and I found out that almost to a T, all of them were dropping within 4 days of the day before they could get out with all their money. So if they withdrew, they got a full refund. Then I looked at how the courses were built, and they were built on the old distance learning model. You had an orientation, you had a midterm, you had a final. You know where the midterm is in relationship to that cutoff date, right? It's after the cutoff date. So people were going, I don't know if I'm successful. I don't know if I'm succeeding. I don't know. I'm getting out of here. Boink, off they went. So the two things, I brought in those success coaches, so they had a high touch and a support system built in. I also brought in some online tutoring. That's a part of the coaching thing. The other thing though, I changed the entire assessment structure so that if you had, say, in one course, you had 100% of your quizzes, that roughly 40% of them were done in the first 2.5 weeks. Not the grading, a different weighting, okay? So the stuff in the serious end got, the heavier end got a little more weight, but they had constant feedback. You knew where you stood. You knew if you were being successful. You knew if you could succeed. And we also made the faculty change their communication style. We made them active. Talk to people. Have virtual office hours. It's a whole big deal there. Don't even want to go into that. But the point comes down to, people had to know they were being successful. By the way, we dropped the drops went down to about high 20s, which was normal at the community college period. Went back to no significant difference. high touch, high tech. Same thing with work. Need to have the high touch. So let me give a problem, and I'm running a hair late. I'm sorry. I apologize, everybody. It's 7 o'clock. Hang with me for a couple more minutes. I got a problem. I want you to help me solve it. And I do have a solution because but I want to hear you. Okay. Highly skilled contributors. Think IT, think engineering, think nursing, are now suddenly made supervisors of their peers. They're now responsible for budgeting, scheduling, projects, intake. And what they're provided in terms of training is roughly a 2.5, almost 3-day, how to use our finance system, our in-house budgeting tool. And same kind of thing. These people were leaving within the first year at a rate of around 70%. What would you do? And spoiler alert, yes, I changed onboarding. It has something to do with it. So what would you do? Throw it in the chat. Give me some ideas. How would you rearrange the process? Melissa, that's a different part of the program, and we should talk more about that. Shadowing is a good idea, Marion. Part of the thing, Melissa, is you rotate cohorts. So people come in and then they come out, and they have that opportunity, because otherwise they do get burnt out, especially the first year. Then let them kind of go out. Create learning engagement, build support system. Like what kind of support system, Jeannie? People leadership, absolutely, Thashina. But there's more to that. Keep going. What else would you want to build in that? Oh, well, absolutely. I'll give them coaches, manager coaches. Yes, Jeff. Yep. Yeah, it's really hard to if you've been pals and friends, now you got to like tell people you're doing a bad job. Whew. Short training program with others, new supervisors. Yep. All right. So cohorts, you're thinking about cohorts, going from individuals. Yep. The same idea. You're making a cohort of peers. So you're doing this kind of peer-to-peer learning. So that's an opportunity. Absolutely. But there's more. What else would you add? Give me 2 more and then I'll share with you where we went. Yes, it is a part of it, Marion. Absolutely. Well, and fail. I'm a big fan. Fail now. You learn more when you fail than when you succeed, right? It sticks longer. Oh, more paths. That's a great point about when I did some work with the idea that there's a professional path and there's a management path. Yeah, that's an HR discussion. That was not an option at that particular role. I brought that up and that was not an option, unfortunately. Soft skill training, absolutely, Samantha. So I expanded that a little bit. Let me share with you where I went with this. First things first. They were tapped usually by one of their leaders. So we did give them the option of saying, do you want to do this? Here's a day in the life. And we made some very short, numerous little day in the life experiences, what it's like to, negotiate schedules with coworkers, what it's like, people telling us what it was like to have to, tell my friend that I needed them to work. They shared that kind of stuff. What it was like to, deal when people called in, as a manager. From the prior group of these people, we gave them a mentor so that they had somebody that they could reach out to, that they were safe. And we did provide those mentors some training on how to be a mentor. And I mean that in the more traditional, formal sense of not just a buddy or a coach. This was truly a mentor, somebody with more experience who could share how to do things and navigate the waters. We gave them a bunch of materials that up front, this is before they got going, that got them into the topic areas that were key to the business that they were now responsible for. And we gave them a checklist. Now, part of the spreadsheet, by the way, we were able to tie it into the Outlook system of email. So they had calendars, reminders that would auto-populate into their calendars with a 2-week window in advance. So they knew it. So we're able to use high tech to help them be prepared to deal with some of the business stuff. Okay. One of the other things, so they had a checklist, so they didn't forget, and it was based on the calendar thing. The other thing we completely changed out the training system. We completely trained out the calendar. This 3-day thing, out the door. First of all, they were in 12 different states, 11 different states. I'm sorry. We had like 12,000 employees total, but 11 different states. And what we did was, we made it on a blended hybrid fashion. And this was before the pandemic. It was just too silly to handle this other stuff. And we focused on simulations. We focused on letting them try. We created this a simulation of this financial system, this unique thing that they built in the 80s that they could not give up. They just loved it so much. So we simulated it so they could screw it up and not worry about it. We also gave them soft skill interactions where they could do some role plays and practice. Some of it was simulated, and then we moved into more actual one-on-ones. And then we did some actual, training on some stuff that they just had to learn how to do in terms of leadership techniques, project management skills, and some of the sales stuff that they had to be aware of. There was a salesperson in those offices, but they had to be able to communicate. So we had some more of the business kind of stuff that went on with it. We also refocused the conversations. So the first 90 days, they would have 1 to 2, sometimes even 3 conversations with their personal leader. And they could be short, because going back to that assessment model at the community colleges, am I doing a good job? Am I okay? I want to know. And there's only one person that's going to tell me, and that's that leader. So we made this up, and it was incumbent on the leader. And we put this into their personal development plan, and they had to track it in the learning management system so we could monitor. And we did, by the way. I'm not the nicest person at times. It's like, no, we all step up. We step up together, and we support each other. We take care of each other. It was funny because it was in a clinical setting. The idea of saying we take care of each other, and to have some of these managers go, "Oh, I don't want to do that," and going, "We're here to take care of each other. That's our business." Sorry, soapbox. I'm off. So the idea is in the first 90 days, they had real-time interactions with their leader to get feedback. And the leaders were trained on the idea that you are to give feedback that is constructive and builds for success. Part of the retention is part of your incentive built into your pay process. We wanted them to keep these people. Attrition rate was killing us. It's expensive. It's all get out. Now, at that point, though, we started to back them off because, managers have a life too, and they've got jobs that they're responsible for. So we created that more informal but consistent peer-to-peer group, that cohort that you could do the virtual, "Hey, Bob, how do I do this?" And that went from 4 months on, where we, formalized meetings and then started letting them, about 7 or 8 months, they started taking it over themselves, which was great because we would back out of it. And in that, I also created this kind of a 12-month cycle. You don't have to read this. This is just one way of doing it. The idea, though, is that upfront, high touch with your locals. And then later on, start broadening back out. Hybrid, fine. Connections, all about it. Simulations, training, absolutely. Asynchronous, fine. Chances for interactions, absolutely. You got to do that kind of stuff. So, and if this is the handout, by the way, so we can put the handout in chat, I'd be most grateful. And there's notes within it. But the idea is that, it's all about being welcoming, being human, planning in advance. Think about the things that people need to do to be successful in getting their job done. And don't think about just day one. Think about 6 to 12 months out. Really be purposeful, be planful. I mean, this is where I think leaders have got to stop, reacting, and start reacting and start planning. Plan is a good 4-letter word. We need to use it a little more. Pre-board all you can. Offload anything you can. If you can get it up front, pre-board people. Start as soon as you possible. Make those introductions, peer-to-peer, peer-to-client, peer-to-support groups. Make those connections. And as leaders, don't just do an email introduction. Be there, be present, be visible, support your person. Say, look, 20 minutes on a Zoom, 15, 20 minutes, all you need. Doesn't have to be an hour. Make it 15, 20 minutes. That's all. And be there. Facilitate the conversation. Do that. Start as soon as possible and then connect them as best you can. And then again, the idea is that, you want to focus on some of the things that they're doing, when they're doing it. Don't train something that happens 6 months from now. Train what they need to do now. Don't overload them. This isn't a fire hose exercise. This is a long-term investment. You want them to be successful, so think about the long term. And this is also the time where you can start identifying the things that are stupid. I mean that nicely. But there are some processes and some paperwork that are just dumb. And we don't have to do that anymore. So maybe it's time to change. This is a great opportunity. We're here. Let's change. Let's make it better for everything. And the last thing I will say is that I cannot stress enough is that we need to be social. So invite them and make sure you invite your teams too. Take time before your staff meetings. Have people show up a little early. Let's talk about what's going on. Those cribbage players, gotta love them. They're having a great time and they're very engaged. And it's okay to have a Zoom coffee or a Zoom libation, whatever it is. It's a part. I mean, we would have drinks after work. So have drinks after work. It's okay. It's time to be, make the time to build identity, to build community. That builds a career. And if you do all those things, this is kind of what you go back to. When you think about the 4 C's that Sherm shared with us and my additional C, when you think about all those things, this is what results in happening. Long-term success. People stay. They're aligned to purpose. They have passion. They have trust and they have safety. Why wouldn't they stay? You've all been very, very gracious tonight. I'm open for questions. It's 7:12. So I apologize for running a hair late. Some great conversations in here. I hope you took some notes from the folks in the chat. A lot of people brought some really, really great ideas. I will hang out if anybody wants to have a conversation.